So let's take a look at search for a while this week. Most of you are probably using Google, and I'm going to do a Google search here. So I'm going to type in bat and click search. And let's see, the first thing we might notice is that when I do a search for bat, I get 102 million results. Now, you might think in looking at that you've just searched the web, but you haven't really searched the web. What you've done is you've searched Google's database of the web, or Google's index to the web. No search engine actually can search the entire web because they don't have information on every site on the web. They only have information about some sites. And sites like Google, search engines like Google, have ways that they are searching the web every day to try to find new sites, and they have a very huge database. Other search engines might be very small and specialized and have a very small database. But it's important for you to understand that when you do a search, you have not searched the web. You've searched the index for the specific search engine that you're using. And so when you use different search engines, you're going to get different results. Another thing about this, 102 million results, means that we're going to have to narrow this down because we're not going to find exactly what we need with this. So let's talk about how searches work. Right now in Google I'm doing a keyword search, but it's not really a keyword search. It's actually a string of letters that the computer is looking for. When I do a keyword search, it's a computer that's doing the searching. There's no intelligent human behind this, only computers. And it's looking for a string of letters, B-A-T, in that order. It could bring up all sorts of bat websites. It could bring up websites about baseball bats and websites about little furry mammal bats. And it could even bring up things like bathrooms and acrobats. So it's not smart enough to be able to narrow that down. Now, our computers are getting smarter and smarter, and they do have ways that they are able to understand now more what we're looking for. But let's just talk about it in general terms here. There are a number of things that we can do to help narrow down a search so that we get more specific results than, or more relevant results than these 102 million. So I want to take a look at something called Boolean Logic. Boolean logic is the logic that is behind most search engines. And Boolean logic is also what is used in library searches to narrow down our searches. So let's say we want to do a search for bats. And we're not wanting to find baseball bats. We're only wanting to find little furry mammal bats. So there are a number of ways that we can write our search terms in to combine bats and baseball. So let's see what happens. The first one is to use the search term and between the two terms. So I can say bats and baseball. When I do a search for bats and baseball, it means that every website that comes up has to talk about both bats and baseball. So we end up with just this small little area of overlap that will come up in a search for bats and baseball. Now, if I do the same search but put or between it, bats or baseball, I get very different results. It's going to bring up every website that talks about bats and every website that talks about baseball. So all of these websites are going to come up in a search for bats or baseball. Now, there's one other term in Boolean logic, and that is not. If I do a search for bats but not baseball, it's going to give me just the ones about bats, but it's going to take out all the websites that were about both bats and baseball. Some search engines write it bats but not baseball. Others expect you to write bats minus baseball. So you really have to understand how the different search engines work. But you can see that the results you get are going to be very, very different if you're typing in bats and baseball in a search engine that defaults to and versus one that defaults to or. So it's really important to know what the search engines you are using are searching for. So let's go back to this Google search that we've got, and let's take a look at it. Under the little gear over here, I can get to advanced search. And that's going to give me some hints about how Google works. First of all, it's saying find pages with all of these words. So if I put bat and baseball, it's automatically going to be doing an and search. If I would like to get an exact phrase, if I look over here to the right, I see that if I put it in quotation marks, I can get that exact phrase. If I want to do an or search, then I can use a capital or between my search terms. If I want to do a but not search, I have to put a minus sign right behind the baseball in the case of ours. So there are a number of rules that you can learn about how Google works by going into the advanced search. And I've got some more information on that down below on our website. So let's take a look at something else. I'm going to go to Yahoo. This is another search engine, and it works a little bit differently, and it's important for you to maybe go into the advanced search or find an about page and see if you can see how it's different from Google. But one thing that's different about Yahoo is it allows us to do our keyword search up here by doing a search, but it also allows us to do browsing through directories. And when you search through a directory, that is a subject search. And anytime you're doing a subject search, there's an actual person behind it who is deciding what belongs in a category. So we can see that we have all these different categories that we can browse through, and they even have more categories that we can browse through. If I wanted, for example, to look at all of their health sites, I can click on health, and they've narrowed it down here into lots of different topics. We've got common topics, we've got the top news stories, we've got healthy living articles, and all of these articles are put into these categories by human beings who are looking at the website and determining that it belongs in that category. So you can search the web two ways. You can search it by doing a keyword search, or you can search it by browsing through directories and narrowing down your search that way. Now, many of us stick almost entirely with Google searches, but there are a lot more search engines than that we could be using. So this is a list of search engines that we can use. There aren't as many as there used to be, but there still are many. Some you're familiar with: Yahoo, Bing. Alta Vista is the one that we all used to use before Google started. So I used Alta Vista for years, and now we almost never use it. Hotbot was another familiar one. It's still available. You can still search with all of these searches. You might be familiar with Live Search or AOL Search. So all of these search engines are still available, and all of these search engines work in a different way. So if you're not finding what you're wanting with Google or one search engine, you can always try a different one. Up at the top, there's a little About button. If I click on that, it tells me a little bit about it, and you'll also see that I can browse a directory list. So I'm going to click on that. And here is a list of all of the directories that you can search as a subject search, where people have put things into categories. And you'll also notice there are all these prices. That's because this directory list was designed for people who are wanting to make sure that their websites get listed in different directories. So that's a little beginning introduction to search, and I've got a lot more information down below.